All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Writer's Room. You're watching the Black Market Guide to Immortality's Writer's Room discussion. Uh, joining me, the head writer, Minki, is Adam Ma,
Hello.
Tan Xiao Han,
Hello.
and Hokuno Chu.
Eram karapte.
So I think it might be best to start by just introducing one another and generally what we're working on. Of course, I'm sure everyone knows that I'm the head writer. I'm just the general project manager. I'm working on the bestiary, did various different world building lore pieces. Just generally trying to keep the meat of it together. But for specialty's sake, I'm es- I'm I have the help of a number of very amazing writers and consultants who are joining me today in this conversation. So, Adam, if you can explain a little bit about, just introduce yourself and what you're working on for this project.
Hell yeah. First off, my name's Adam. I've written a whole bunch of different stuff. I've done world building for Paizo's Tianxia. I've got my own little homebrew world that's been ongoing called Teldramir. And I dabble in anything from world creation, which is not what I'm doing here, and fun mechanics. And I'm currently setting up the different paths to gaining immortality that may or may not be uh, black market available. Some of them are personally motivated. Some of them are quests. But yeah, I'm trying to put together something that is more than just grab an item and become immortal or kill a god and take their place, which I think is pretty common in the
Mm,
fantasy genre. But it's not actually that common in mythos, like not just like Korean mythos, but like any culture that has a legend about becoming an immortal. It's a parable, it's a quest, it's a journey that's intended to teach a lesson. And I'm trying really hard to capture that. So when you use these rules, you'll be working alongside your game master to tell a story about your uh, quest, good or bad, to become some kind of an immortal.
Okay, and Chen Xiao Han, if you can speak a little bit about yourself.
Hi, hello. Hi, I'm Shahan, and like Adam, I think, Adam, we met at the Tianxia World Guide, right? I think we work on the same book together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like your giant octopus for president. Yeah,
Oh, I love
So,
that section.
Thank you.
yeah, it's like I wish we had an earlier time to chat, but we didn't. So I'm happy to have this time to chat as well because it's like we are both from, I guess, like we have connections to different southern tropical parts of the world. So it was always felt good to meet up.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah,
We've been
and
like in orbit together.
yeah, and so for myself, I'm from Singapore, and I'm ethnically Chinese, but then being Southeast Asian, probably I have probably a lot of like cultural and ethnic connections from across the region, and I'm happy to work on this because how do I say this? It's like it's kind of serendipitous because when the Black Market Guide to Immortality was when Minky approached me to work on this, I was actually having a lot. Like, I had a ton of materials for Pathfinder 2 and about immortality and about like the kind of the more grungier, skunkier ways of getting immortality. That's not like, oh, I dine on a diet of dew and a flying to the heavens. It's more like a kind of like the really shady stuff, like uh beating up a bureaucrat from the underworld, taking their identity and running away. It's like, like it's a very kind of not, I guess it's like, if you're desperate enough and you really want to run away and the kind of things they think of. And I was kind of interested in the intersection of historical. Everything looks kind of stately, but then underneath there's this like it's like maggots and maggots and dung, right? It's like so. I was actually had a bunch of folders in which I was making some materials for that, and so when Minky approached me, I was like, yeah, you know what? I've got your black market stuff right here. And so like I'm be working a lot of, I think, like on some of the more like some more Chinese influence stuff, or some more like because some of it is kind of hard to translate out, like some Taoist things. It's especially like the very really idiosyncratic things, and while I don't claim to represent like hashtag all Chinese, that kind of thing, it's like I think like it is a bit easier for me to get into it. Especially it's a fun time that we have this stream now, because it's also the 7th lunar month that is important in across like various East and South Asian religions, as a time when of rebirth, when spirits wander the air during at night and offerings are made. So I guess it's a spooky theme for us. So yeah, that's all for me.
Oh yes, the autumn solstice is just around the corner too.
Yeah.
Horkonochu, we are working a bit on expanding the world building of the Izhung region with more Ainu-inspired mythology, cultural and cultural information. If you can introduce yourself and speak a bit.
Eram.
Oh,
Oh, did I?
oh
Oh, do
dear.
I need to do anything to? Okay. Let me try that. Sure.
And producing for this stream once again is Drac, who has very graciously once again lent us expertise. Very, very thankful, especially on a relatively short notice. All good
Okay.
to go. Okay. Okay.
All set?
Horkonochu. Yes.
Okay. Iram karapte kania nakne hokunochu airo kuneruene. Kania nagne rupun kuru ainu kuneruene. My name is Horkunochu Ayaro. I'm an artist from Seattle, and my family is from Shirooi in Hokkaido, the northernmost island of the Japanese archipelago at the moment. I was recommended to the project from another writer from the Tian Chen team, Hiromi, actually. Like she let me know that somebody was looking for somebody familiar with Ainu culture and history and stories to help them out with expanding their world and cross-checking other research, that kind of thing, kind of making sure everything's sort of correct or kind of aligns with Ainu stories and history. Because sometimes, a lot of things on Wikipedia are kind of a mess right now. So speaking of, it's funny you tap me while I'm just like, oh yeah, here's some. I feel like I'm always thinking about tabletop gaming. I've been playing with my friends since middle school, so I always kind of have world building in the back of my mind. And when they're like, "Have you thought about this?" I'm like, "Every day. What do you want to know?" So it was a really auspicious fit, and yeah, the timing is funny too. It's September is the when the salmon start returning to the rivers, and that's always a
Mm.
very important time for us. The Chepnomi, the you know, salmon prayers. So that's a lot of good energy.
We certainly picked an auspicious time to launch this project. Yeah, I was very delighted to have been able to meet you for this project, Horkunochu, because I reckoned that there is a lot of misinformation or flawed about Ainu culture, depending on just where those sources might have come from, who might be relaying that information to begin with. Like, it's like when you're dealing with, I think, when you're trying to learn more about indigenous cultures, you really have to do your due diligence to make sure that it's not it doesn't just capture information from someone outside looking in, but also includes personal meanings, values, signifier people within that culture. Uh, s- certainly feel as they practice, live their live their culture and faith every day.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely appreciate you reaching out because I think, especially these days, it would be very easy for somebody to just feed in every Wikipedia article into something and be like, all right, make me a PDF of all this stuff and I'll sell it back to people for $5. Um, and it's like, I, as an Ainu artist, I definitely appreciate um, a project that wants to um, include Ainu people with the Ainu culture they want to work with.
Absolutely. I can't say that we're ever perfect. Like, I myself am not a history major. I don't really have credentials with academic research and such, but I can at least take these measures to try do my best, consult people who do know more than me to make sure that what we're putting inside our book isn't just absolute horseshit. Uh, but okay, so yes, I think given that the main thesis of our book is to touch on immortality in Eastern religions, we can't uh, we we can't be shy about like explaining exactly what that is. What are some of the mythological touchstones that we're drawing upon to inform and form building? So, I wanted to speak to you, Xiaohan.
Yeah.
Um, so when I reached out to you, I came to you with having done a little bit of my own write up based on information that I found about the tiers and degrees of immortality, at least when it
Mm.
comes to Taoist tradition or cultivation fiction that's based on like various different Taoist thoughts.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
could could you could you speak on that just a bit?
Okay. All right. So I guess like for context wise, it comes from whatever I'm saying comes from I guess my subjective perspectives as a practitioner of like a Taoist folk religion. It's kind of like probably my
Mm,
first when I was a kid. It's kind of like, hi, this is the pick up the sticks of incense and pray to heaven and ancestors. It's like, all right, sure, follow. It's a very practice-based religion for me when I grew up. So and it took a long time for me to make sense of it. So it comes from that position of personal kind of practice and as well as what Taoist cultivation fiction, as you mentioned, it's a pretty wide range of genres. And as a member of the so-called Chinese diaspora, I mean, I hate that term because it's like in some senses it assumes there is this home and diaspora kind of thing, which is kind of complex, right? But the whole issue that comes out is I being in Singapore means that I am connected culturally to what's happening over in, let's say, like the larger Sinosphere, but I have like some of my own parallel developments, and it's sometimes almost a safe game state that you put outside, and then we have things like, okay, let's have massive changes, and you come to a diasporic place, you can see, hey, this is what things develop and transform 20, 30 years ago into its own direction. So for me, that's my relationship with this kind of Taoist religion as well as Taoist thought and Taoist philosophy. So about like cultivation, to bring back over to cultivation immortality, I think like firstly because there's China's very large, and then like China's very kind of like there's like not one singular kind of I guess a Chinese entity. There's a lot of various kind of places with their own regional sects, and there are also various kind of like, it's a very agricultural religion, it's a very agrarian religion, but there's also aspects of where indigenous non-Han Chinese kind of religions also kind of had their meeting with Taoist ideas, and there was that whole moving in. And I mentioned practice at the beginning because a lot of Taoism is how do I say this, is you don't have to be very pious, I suppose, to be a Taoist. You could be. It's a very magical religion in the sense that it's a very occultist kind of religion. So like you could, like right now being the 7th month, right? So for us, it's like this is the month that people believe that the hungry dead kind of walk the earth at night. And so what we have as Taoists is that we have a lot of festivals to. We put our festivities out there, like put our food, drink, and perform dramas for the dead at night. Part of it is people are doing so is like, oh yeah, let's placate the dead so that, you know, they feel a bit more relaxed so that they don't cause havoc on the living world. Now I could be doing this as a Taoist, and that's what I believe. Like we're doing this as a Buddhist, I'd be like, let us hope that you go to a compassionate rebirth into a better place. I could do both at the same time, I guess what I'm trying to say is that you don't need to believe in a lot of, let's say, like philosophical, ethical, philosophically consistent stuff to be a Taoist. It's a very magical, go and look for spells, look for practices, look for best practices, seek esoteric wisdom from a god, a goddess, or a teacher, and gain some techniques in order to get ahead out in life, right? And that's to use the Mandarin, the Chinese phrase is basically the Tao, right? Tao is like there is the highfalutin kind of intellectual Taoism that you see people have with Zhuangzi, all those which is, am I a dude who's thinking of a butterfly or butterfly thinking of a guy? It's like that kind of philosophical Taoism is not something which the everyday common classes of folk practitioners will be using. They're more concerned about like how do I invite the rain? How do I avoid the floods? How do I work with that? And that kind of Taoism is where that immortality you get from being a very terrestrial, very, I guess, very blue-collar Taoist practitioner has to do with like how do I avoid the undead? How do I avoid plague? How do I... And I do remember distinctly as a child, it's like when we had examinations, because like East Asia examination trauma is like there were people taking those yellow fulu paper talismans and burning them, and then putting them into paper, putting in the water and drinking them before the examinations, hoping that you will confer some degree of knowledge upon them. And usually those paper charms will be associated with, let's say, like maybe a Taoist deity of knowledge or scholarship. And I had a friend who did it, and his background, his family came from a pretty staunch evangelical Christian background, and he did that. And I said, isn't this kind of inconsistent? He said, it's not bad to get some extra spiritual insurance. And like and I think that kind of sums up like the kind of like very everyday approach of Taoism to magic and immortality and health. Is like, you know, we may not know how it works, but then we are more than willing to try a whole bunch of different things for the lay people. Then once you get to the scholars and the priests and everything, these are where they define that's where it gets a bit more definitive. It's like the priests will be the ones who provide these solutions, provide these rituals, but then when you get over to the intellectuals and the philosophers, they start talking about immortality as a kind of more abstract thing. It's like, it's a little bit like philosophically, you can be affected by terrible things, but then if your mind and your heart is free, then you are kind of like safe from political persecution, that kind of stuff. So it's very different context. Because one is dealing with what happens if I get colic and I die? Then the other one is kind of like, how do I basically transcend the horrors of the imperial bureaucratic world? And so both of this is very class divided, and all that is under the massive mess of Taoism. And so when someone reads it, it's like, okay, Taoists are very non-worldly because they care about cultivation to the ethereal depths of the world. Then otherwise, like Taoists are extremely worldly. They are thinking about how to make cash and how to find hidden treasures and how to find things. So, and I think just now, like we were talking about Wikipedia and it's kind of confusing mess of things, right? And I think to a layperson, when it comes in that, it can get kind of confusing which Taoism we're talking about. Yeah. So I hope that kind of sets some context for the weird mess of Taoism that we're dealing with here.
It's interesting that you'd bring up, yeah, like immortality in multiple different faiths has usually just been symbolized the crystallization of wisdom. But I guess for blue collar, yeah, like you mentioned blue collar Taoism, blue collar, pursuing immortality as a lay person. Generally speaking, like you live a better life if you live preventatively. You prevent you live healthy. You prevent diseases. You avoid nasty spirits coming after you.
Yeah.
I think as a layperson, that helps me understand it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you start to achieve immortality simply by avoiding dangers, and I mean that's step one. Just avoid dangers as much as possible, and just keep your bodies free of, just stuff that could
Like
bog it down.
harm you, right? Yeah. And and I think a big part of Taoism that helps out a lot is because people always talk about the yin and the yang, right? So that then translates out over to many kind of East Asian kind of like cosmologies, right? The idea of basically these two intersecting energies, right? Basically, these two principles, one that is bright and one that is dark, one that is warm and also cold, and they contain a little bit of each other inside their most extreme polarity, so they melt back into the same thing. So a large part of Taoism is about this kind of dichotomies in which you have this like impossible dichotomies, and there's also this very strong aspect of you could work with the energies and the dichotomies within you and try to align yourself over to a certain principle a little bit more than another. So, for example, if you, like it's a bit like Lent, like for Catholic Lent, it's like, all right, if I was to not eat, let's say XYZ things during a certain period, then there'll be blessings of the spirit, I guess, from a Christian paradigm. But then for Taoism, will be you kind of also kind of purify yourself away from disease-causing pathogens in both in the spiritual and the bodily sense. If you cut yourself away from certain things, and I guess that's why people do things like Tai Chi. They do things like they do things like cultivate and meditate so as to kind of align themselves over to it. That's the nice part of it. The not so nice part of it is there's also, because I mentioned the blue collar Taoist aspects, there's also this strange, in my opinion, fascination with, I guess, sympathetic magic that kind of comes out because it's a very magical tradition. So a lot of like bringing back the real world issues. There's a lot of like problems with. Especially in the tropical countries where like biomes are being depleted of animal products because they have some kind of mythological kind of association with vitality, strength, or health. And then now we are living in a world where there is basically a larger population, high economic pressure. So you have a lot of people who would be like, if I wrote this in like the 6th century, it's like, if you were to take these animals, like, I don't know, like liver, you gain strength. And then, however, in the 21st century, where getting those animals is a lot easier and it's causing major problems. So when I myself write stuff for Taoism, I try very hard not to have Monster Hunter elements because, like, I try very hard not to have, like, catch this lion, catch this tiger, catch this unicorn, catch this dragon, because it does go down kind of some squeaky parts, but I don't think I can avoid that with the black market guide because it's exactly on theme for the kind of shady skibidi stuff that people will be doing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, partially it also has to do with a little bit with D&D. Like to an extent, we have a whole big
it does,
area.
yeah.
We are going to have to do some combats. Which, speaking of, I guess we'll turn it over to Adam. Adam, we are trying to build more of an achievement-based system of progressing through immortality. I was hoping you could explain a little bit more on what you've been working on in terms of that.
Yeah, it's funny that Shahan touched on the, I guess, like the Taoist principle about like not wanting to just encourage people to kill every single animal and harvest their parts. Because I also don't want to do that necessarily. I think that when you look at tabletop gaming, like whether it's 5e or Pathfinder, I think most D20 systems really encourage you to murder your way into a solution. Which is there's nothing wrong with that. There's like, I think a big part of the power of fantasy is you play a wizard, you play a fighter, you play a rogue, you kill some kings, you know, you overthrow the government, you kill a dragon, you do a dungeon, you do a dragon, and then you get that feeling of satisfaction having overcome something. But I think that when we look at becoming an immortal in popular culture, um, there's like two routes that you can take almost, and one of them is you just prove yourself worthy, and to do that you have to define your immortality, or the rules of immortality are defined by a higher being, or alternatively you make your own rules. Like you find you find like a cheat code, you discover a series of trinkets that can, you know, basically power you up. So I want to try to find a fine line between that. So that's kind of what we're doing with this like achievement based system. Is I want a system for people who really prefer to role play their way at the table, players who want to become immortal or find a way towards immortality, but there's some flexibility in defining what that is going to be for you. And as you progress through the system, you'll gain boons that relate to the things that you're doing well, or alongside those, you'll gain hubris that will give you a weakness to offset
Mm.
the thing that you're doing well. So that you're, you know, becoming a master of something means that you need to have a flaw in another way. And I think that this hyperfixation on becoming an immortal, which should be on some level a little unusual for you in a fantasy setting, like most people that live in these various fantasy worlds that we have, they don't aspire to become anything greater than just like a regular person. That's what makes you a hero. So if you're going to become a hero, you should be known for the things that are great and maybe the flaws that you have as well. So yeah, I have a system for that will cater to players who really prefer to uh, play role play first or through their in-game actions that aren't necessarily combat related. And then I have a separate system that is kind of the same thing, but for people who are a little bit more combat oriented, that are they give boons and hubrises, but I've renamed them a little bit. Maybe that'll change. But I kind of want it to be like a system where you gain a kind of feat, but then with each major feat that you accomplish, there is a ripple effect. So you will draw the attention of people who may not be keen on your success. You can potentially get a rival that you might not want. I want it to be open to interpretation, partly because I think when you sit at the table, unless every single person is going down this path together, there's a really high possibility that your character will just have a level of power creep attributed to you. And I want to try to avoid that. And I want to make sure that whatever you decide, whatever path you decide to take, it's not just for the player, it's for the GM as well. Like the GM is the one who has to put together these challenges and who has to challenge you and who has to create these scenarios. So in having this like almost achievement based system, the GM knows what your path is, the GM knows what you want to accomplish, and you can work together to create this really elaborate story that has built-in rewards no matter what path you take.
When I first started speaking to you about constructing this progression system, I love the idea of with hubris, with various ways, like gaining a rival in tandem. I think we also spoke. Xiaohan also brought up that Taoism seems to be a lot about a lot c- be centered around the mentor mentee relationship. Like there is a process of learning and educating is happening, like depending on where you are in terms of your spiritual and physical growth. So incorporating all that into the progression system that gives the GM also as much to bounce off with you as you the player uh, continue to ascend. I thought was incredibly novel and something that I haven't really seen too much myself.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's I guess from like a book content perspective is like a tremendous selling point for us. I as a lifelong GM and as someone who runs games professionally multiple times a month and I've got my own community that I play for, it's really hard to pick up a resource and not have it be either this is for the player or this is for the game master, and there's almost like no in between. And that's kind of a fallacy because this is a collaborative hobby. Like it doesn't matter whether you are a group of power gamers that just want to kill every single person in your path or monster in your path, or you are a group of people telling a romance story, or if there is a heist that you're doing together. It doesn't really matter what the world setting is. It's always collaborative. So I want
Uh,
to make sure that this works exactly like that. Like it gives both sides of the table something to do together.
uh, Harunochu. So we've spoken a little bit about it's very we've spoken about immortality in the context of like Taoist traditions and such. I we spoke a little bit about hero figures in Ainu mythology, themes of immortality that also crop up here and there. I was hoping you could also elaborate on that.
Yeah, immortality is, I don't like, it hasn't come up super often in like so I read a lot of yukara, which are Ainu epic story traditions. Um, Traditionally, Ainu was not a language that it was written down, it was an oral tradition. So it has an enormous catalog of stories that were preserved um, by being able to be passed down this way. So I've been folklore is something that I um, am particularly interested in from all cultures. Um, so of course, I've been loving digging into our own stories. But one story about like I guess achieving immortality that I did come across that I thought was very funny um, was the story of Samayan Kuru. And so there's two kind of heroic ish figures who show up a lot in um, Ainu stories, particularly in the South. Oki Kurumi, who is the hero type character who does everything well, and Samayon Kuru, who is also a powerful shaman in his own right, but is kind of Oki Kurumi's foil. There's a very Mario and Luigi type relationship where it's like, oh, Samayan Kuru is messing something up or dying, and Oki Kurumi has to come in and like save him or like kill the creature or like, you know, help him after slipping on a banana peel or some nonsense. Um, and uh, Oki Kurumi himself is the offspring of the thunder god Kannakamui and the
Mm.
humble elm tree Chikisani. And so he is already sort of like, he is already as a Halfkamui, born of divinity from the sky, and Earth having this earthly mother from the mortal Earth. He already has this divinity and ability to kind of travel between worlds. Um, there's a story about how Samayan Kuru achieved immortality on accident um, after a bear got into his wine storage. And
Classic.
this classic, like this bear, I think was, or the bear spirit was a servant of Samayan Kuru, and he knew where to find his booze, and drank all of his wine, and in his drunkenness killed Samayan Kuru's favorite dog. And
Ooh.
so, in a rage, Samayan Kuru chased the bear up the tallest elm tree, which we were discussing a little bit earlier, is funny enough often mistranslated as the halibut tree. Um,
Tasty.
but he climbs up the tallest elm tree and chases the bear into the sky, where they fight for 6 days and 6 nights, and then become, I believe, the Big Dipper constellation. And so his sort of like, I guess you could interpret his ascension to godhood in a couple of different ways. Was it his rage? Was it his love for his dog? Was it the chase of the hunt? Was it his, something? He did kind of like Wile E. Coyote himself into the stars and become immortal in that way. So there's some humorous ascension stories in Ainu Yukara.
Well, I think these are all different angles and perspectives of hero stories that end up with immortality that we should take into consideration. Like, it's not all just you try to become a lich and sacrifice 666 souls for that sake. I mean, off top as an aside, one of my favorite little lores from Pathfinder is Caden Kalian's own ascension just on
Oh yeah,
on a
yeah.
bet like that
Getting drunk. Yeah.
yeah, that never fails to just get a chuckle and a smile out of me. So I think having paths to immortality that aren't just entirely just necessarily like iniquitous, like requiring the sacrifices of other creatures, like it generally stories and mythology frowns upon immortality as just kind of you overreaching yourself in terms of you separating yourself from your humanity, which is still a factor here, based on Shauhan's and Adam's uh, what Shauhan and Adam have said about
Mhm.
just what immortality entails. Uh, Speaking of, so Shauhan, I
Yeah.
posited to you before we started working. What I tried doing was I tried making a degrees of templates and such connected
Mm.
to uh, degrees of immortality, tiers of immortality. So players can meet other NPCs, other mons creatures that have also become immortal. I guess I wanted to speak a little bit more in terms of like in terms of how those might look just from a mechanical perspective.
Okay. So
How
I
would we
think
deal
like
with like
if you
immortal NPCs?
okay, so I guess like we that's the way that I think we shouldn't do it, and there's a way that I think like a big way, and there's a big way I think we should do it. So the way that we shouldn't do it. I think having said that, it has some wisdom to it, which is immortality is a bit of a sliding scale, right? Because from a perspective of the ant that's crawling across my table now, looking at my Milo, it's like I'm pretty immortal. I live in I live in a quantum of time that's quite different from this little fella running across the table, and I guess like mortality kind of reaches everything different ways, and I guess for me as a random farmer, I guess in the setting, being able to live for 300 years would be pretty damn good if my mortality rate is like 30 years old, right? So there's that angle, which is immortality is in a way relativistic, and there's a bit of a sliding scale. So I say I don't really want to go fully into that, because then it kind of like breaks down the core premise of what is immortality. If immortality is just living longer than that guy, and it's like it has to have some absolute, a little bit objective kind of a quality to it, rather than a relativistic, subjective, relational thing, right? But having said that, I think like talking about templates, talking about that, is something which I think works with it, because people. I was talking about sympathetic magic just now, and I think the templates you provided have a little bit of that as well, right? It's like if I was to cultivate according to, let's say, demonic energies, like a fiendish energies, and I gain immortality, but at what cost, at what price, right? And it's like I my ego persists longer as a certain kind of like a nest of neurosis, desires and appetites that and I get it's like not a very skillful cultivation, because I do live longer, but so the I that lives longer is not necessarily a very good version of the I, if you believe in the persistent I. Then it's like same thing if somebody is like, oh, I'm going to give up all my possessions, I'm going to help people, and then I will live on in the memories of others in like a hero story. Then that is somewhat maybe a more skillful kind of cultivation, in which you ascend rather than descend. But both of them are still kind of like templated, kind of like you can sort of see the RPG mechanics. It's like, this is your base class, your base abilities, and then you get something on it to flavor you according to a certain path that you have chosen to take. So I was like, when you passed me a lot of like the things to talk about, I was looking at them and thinking, one of the design challenges would be, how do we ensure that it feels immortal enough? And when you talk about immortal NPCs, like the immortal NPCs can't be just like it shouldn't be a, what works for me is what's different for you, right? Because that gets into the RPG problem of, you mean the NPC, he's badass, and then he joins your party and he sucks. it's like the Final Fantasy problem, right? Yeah, oh, you were so cool in the cutscene, but when you join my party, you kind of suck, right? So like the mechanics of the immortal NPCs and the mechanics of the PCs facing mechanics of immortality, they should have some degree of overlap in order to like make this immortality feel the same across, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm not sure whether that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between immortality and invincibility, and we want to
Yeah.
we want to make sure that in terms of power scaling, like everything still feels balanced with the player's adventures. Like you, but yeah, I mean, I guess immortality could come from, depending on, like you said, whether it comes from fiendish source
Fiends.
powering you, celestial source, just something else entirely.
Mm.
There might certainly be trade-offs. There might certainly be advantages that you
Yeah.
gain from it. There,
Yeah.
Adam mentioned it as well. Like when you gain a new power, there should be some degree of trade-off, even if you're much more durable than a regular that has a X template. You
Mm.
still have an Achilles heel that can be exploited. I guess is generally the conceit that we should head towards when it comes to building immortal NPCs.
When you think about it, a lot of the most famous stories that we have in like at the very least like Western culture of like legendary heroes like Achilles, they're largely defined by the things that they couldn't do, right? Even if we look at like uh I've, I'm not like a history major, so I might show my butt here a little bit. But when we
That's
look at
okay.
like Jason and the Argonauts or like Hercules, like any of these other like fictional demigod-like beings, there's entire novels about the things that these people couldn't do, and in most cases, the creatures they needed to kill to overcome it. But highlighting those people's weaknesses and how they dealt with these trials, knowing that they were so limited, is what makes this character so fascinating and so timeless. And there's no reason why we can't give that to the player as well. When we already know that by the mechanics of the game, as they play the game longer and longer, they're just going to get exponentially more powerful. Why can't we challenge them to gain a weakness or two along the way to maybe have them think about some of the things that they're doing more?
I think that could particularly be exciting for higher level, specifically higher level D&D play, largely because like it's been said that once you're at tier 4, just like at when you're level 17, you have access to ninth level spells. Like then and there, you are pretty much a god. Like very unlikely to actually die. Depending on like whatever character class features or uh, you might have. I'm looking at you, Zealots. Uh, so the trade-offs and like I I feel for if there's a lot of role play incentive, players might be willing to take on weaknesses just so long as like at the same time they're just not so debilitating that they're just totally unfun to play around. Like I think weaknesses and flaws can be very fun.
Yeah.
Uh, Horku no Chu. I guess just in terms of like I think we've started speaking more on like he, the he- ex, what makes a hero, as far as like the path to immortality is concerned. Like I guess this might be a good opportunity to share with the audience a little bit more what the general setting is like what are the values, what are the values, aspirations and ideals of the average person in this land. Like maybe you could share a little bit about that.
Sure. I feel like I think it might be it's been I would say it's kind of impossible to not compare mythologies between like Ainu mythology and Japanese mythology, um, especially in this setting where they're kind of expected to interact with each other in a very real and tangible way. Um, and uh, there is, I would say that the divinity or like access to the gods it probably feels a lot more closer
Mm.
in the the lands that we're working on. I'm writing a I hope it's okay to mention
Yeah, yeah.
the
Feel free. Feel free.
writing details. But I'm working on a series of lands that we're calling Kumoshir, the land of the bow hunters. And in Kumoshir, uh, like in Ainu religion, spirituality, um, uh, one of our most central gods is Apahuchi Kamoi, grandmother fire, and she is the most important god in the Ainu pantheon, the most important to us, as her title of grandmother might imply. Um, but she's not a queen or an empress or this sort of like distant kind of um, monarchical type figure. She's literally our grandmother who lives in our house with us in the fireplace. She keeps us warm. She cooks our food and she protects us from spirits that would do us injury or harm. And there's no like organized priesthood. The religion itself is not like the fireplace of every home is the altar of everyone's religion, and the head of the house, whoever that might be, is sort of like is largely responsible for um, religious activities or maintaining good relationship with the spirits. As you know, usually senior members of the household, grandmothers and grandfathers, while younger members of the household are busy doing the more like earthly, physical, day-to-day chores of maintaining a household and um, livelihoods and that sort of thing. So the like the day a daily interaction um in like the in a kudu person in this setting is your neighbors are your god. The gods are your neighbors essentially.
Mhm.
Um they're uh you would pay as much deference to the god of the river as you would any emperor or king. Um, because in large part, the god of the river is responsible for whether you eat that day or, how much clean water you have. Like everything um, is in uh, you're in constant relationship and negotiation with your environment and the spirits who operate in that environment. There's a sort of a, a an interesting thing about the um the I guess the immortality of the Ainu soul, perhaps, um, because it is sort of considered that the thing that makes you human, Ainu, mortal, Kuru, is being alive, having
Mm.
a body that can die on Earth. Once you don't have a body that can die on Earth anymore, once you're a spirit and you go into that world, you're essentially become a kamoi. Um, you you're not necessarily like you're like by technical definition, you don't necessarily become like a powerful god who can create the earth or control the weather, but as a spirit, as a non-mortal human, you are technically now a kamoi in that kamoi stage, um, and are eventually reincarnated on Earth, uh, unless something happens to interrupt that sort of that natural reincarnation cycle. Um, so there are quite a few stories of mm, people dying in bad ways or having these kinds of like hang-ups that corrupt the spirit or um, some mishap in burial rites or something happens to the body or something that would interrupt that, you can like certainly turning into a ghost is possible, but in the stories that I've read more often, you run the risk of becoming a huri bird, a blood red bird that will visit your relatives, or you visit your relatives in the form of this blood red bird, this huri bird, to warn them of your mistakes to help them avoid them in the future. What happens to the hoodie bird after it passes away? Maybe there's another chance at reincarnation or that cycle. But the soul inside the hoodie bird is still essentially human. And that is there's a little bit of like, I suppose, technical immortality inherent in the soul of these beings who are, according to our religion, we're all the grandchildren of Epahuchi Kamui. So there's this sort of like divine immortal spark in the mortal flesh that we recycle and then let that process continue on.
I'm so I'm so glad that you touched on the proximity of relationship between the Kamui and the Ainu people. I we we delve into into divinity just because when you think of immortality, like it's hard to separate that from godhood. Like it in certain contexts, those it just both are synonymous. Both seem synonymous, but we want to kind of make a distinction between the two, just because certain Eastern faiths do have very different opinions on exactly what constitutes a god, what constitutes a human, what happens within the different cycles of reincarnation is a huge theme among our it's central to our world building. I think this is a good opportunity to show off that the samsara illustration by our artist and friend Deton Arts. Uh, is it up?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
oh gosh. Yeah,
I'm gonna
so
turn
this
off
is
my
this
VPN.
oh that could be why.
Yeah.
It yeah, if they're interacting with in a way. But yeah, the I think the concept of samsara is crucial to just how we construct just the cosmology of the general like it's symbolized in a like at various different stages your soul can reincarnate into different planes of existences, whether it's the earthly plane, whether it's the plane of the natural, like I think the first world or the Fey one, whichever game system you're talking about, hell, the the liminal space where basically the ghost realm where you're just kind of suffering and awaiting for immortality. Like as a whole, though, these are all encapsulated in in a cosmic inescapable wheel that is bound by the concept of death, uh, which which is under the purview of demon Mara in the setting isn't just a demon of death, but also of re-death. Like like immortality under certain definitions would mostly entail continued prolonged existence in one stage or another. You're not exactly escaping the wheel either. You're still within it, subject to death or banishment in some form or fashion. So
That's true for like even the gods themselves. Like a common
exactly.
example is like a god can be kind of like knocked out of their body in a fight, and have to watch themselves from above while they reorient for a minute and having to like get back into the fight.
Yeah, that's oh god, that's such a visual image of a god being knocked in a different plane of existence just while they're recovering. I guess I've seen that in a lot of fantasy too, honestly. Uh, but yeah, this cosmic we want to tie uh our definitions of immortality and divinity into this cosmic alignment. Uh, in a as we shape our world and such, and what it means to fully, absolutely transcend from it. I think at that point, though, like you have reached the end of your game, basically. Like you are outside the purview. Your character has ascended beyond any degree of perception. So that that I guess that's kind of where I'm putting the very most absolute end state, the the a realm state of being that's beyond even the gods, perhaps. Okay, I think this is a good opportunity to open it up to questions. Does anyone in chat have any questions based on just what we've generally discussed? I think somebody asked what's our favorite part of working working on the book. I guess what what parts have gotten you particularly excited? We'll start with I think yeah, Adam.
I love a good design challenge, and I do feel like I have unintentionally created a very in-depth challenge for me to tackle. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm also uh so I'm Chinese Puerto Rican. Uh I'm from New York. I'm an extremely deluded individual in terms of culture. I've had a lot of exposure to a lot of different things. So I find this a fantastic opportunity to learn a lot more about cultures and subcultures and religions that I've only like scratched the surface of, and trying to make sure that that aligns with the work I'm doing mechanically while also creating something that should hopefully be gamified in a really rewarding way. I think it's a really, really cool design challenge, and I'm really excited to try to bring that to life as best I can for you all.
Oh yeah, I'm absolutely excited to see just the challenge come to fruition. I feel people will be more excited when it comes to just prompts, areas to explore in terms of role playing. Like that is the spice of any game that really makes it really creates special long remembered experiences between players. Uh, Shahan, anything you're particularly excited to tackle with this project?
Yeah, I think like because we are, how do I say this? It's something which I've been kind of like gestating and slowly thinking about, but I'm particularly excited about it for this project because of the what I'm thinking is, you know, in terms of like cosmologies, you mentioned the samsaric wheel, right? So like and we have, for example, we have discussions of, let's say, cultivation systems. We have the kind of like the almost like, I hate to use the word like apotheosis in case it kind of like damages the original concept, but like the becoming godhood, becoming a Kamui in Ainu mythology and Ainu belief, and then we have like some stuff that's more folk religion within Taoism, then we have the more intellectual traditions, then you have the overall term samsaric is something very big in Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism. So how do we, what I'm interested in tackling is how do I keep all these things in a way as metaphysically true and significant as possible without privileging one overarching paradigm as being this is the actually all this is true or this is the most true, which is kind of like sometimes I get a bit of a problem when I'm playing a game and there's like you know you have like it's a no choice. It's like one person's cosmology is absolutely the most accurate and everybody else has just either a misunderstanding or inferior version of it. And for me, in any project, I try to kind of juggle that. Because I'm also cognizant of it myself, because it's like I juggle my identities as a Buddhist as well as a Taoist. It's like being this Chinese religion thing. So I have a certain hierarchy of like, okay, does this make sense ethically? And then my system, it works out. But if I'm making an RPG project that has multiple players that come on, multiple writers, multiple creators, I think for myself it's very important when I write my sections to not add to kind of like a weightage of like pushing one thing to be one paradigm or one perspective to be more accurate, true, or powerful than another. I think that's actually pretty much the thing. It happens a lot in D&D because it'll be like end of the day is like the extra planer kind of like somebody who knows about the planes is always more knowledgeable than somebody who doesn't, right? And then on one hand, that's kind of a power fantasy we have. But on the other hand, in real life, kind of like situations, if I was to go to my neighborhood, the lady who's downstairs of my place, who's like burning incense and knows a lot about rituals for dealing with the dead, and I say to her she doesn't understand basic occult theory, I think there's a problem there, right? Yeah, so it's like I want to not reproduce this very college educated literalist visualist kind of like prejudices inside RPG work, so that because I think the damage it does most is actually to indigenous groups, to people with oral traditions, people without organized religious kind of structures, right? Then they don't get that positioning. So that's just something I'm excited to tackle to keep in my mind as I work through it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can't. It's difficult in projects like this to be very uh, too like we have to cut down in terms of the amount of detail that we provide just for playability's sake. But how do we do that while also at the same time uh also at the same time like respecting the cultures that we are ultimately
Yeah.
borrowing from. Also, I just to quickly interrupt, but I would like to point out that we have just hit 81,000. Just
Yay!
Yay!
thank
Yay.
uh thank you very much to if you're watching this, if you're in chat, thank you very much for your generosity. We are
Thank you very much.
continually humbled. Uh, okay, so Hokunochu, is there yeah, let's bring it to you. Is there anything you're particularly interested touching on, speaking of accomplishing with this project?
Yeah, I've been given a lot of leeway to really world build here, to kind of build a lot of stuff from scratch essentially to make this world of Kumoshir. And kind of touching on what you guys were saying about how things interact and not necessarily prioritizing one system or culture over another. I'm actually very interested in how, like, the Ainu system or the analogous people interact with other systems, other pantheons. Like, what is the Kamui's relationship with the Kami? What's the Kamui's relationship with the spirits of Danguk or Longshin even? Like, because obviously they are not as mm, geographically bound as mortals are. Um, like, are the sun gods sassy with each other, or like what's going on? Um, and also how the cultures interact as well. I have, as I'm writing some like brainstorming ideas for kotans for villages on the islands. Have one thing I want to. I'm interested in how diaspora
Um,
villages from. Oh,
Xiaohan, I think we're getting some noise from your end.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Is it better now? Yeah.
all good. But
Oh,
I'm I I I'm I'm interested in how like diaspora populations from uh Kumoshir's neighbors from Denguk, from Longshin, from Kyogen also live in the context of Kumoshir and their Kuru neighbors, and how do um people from other lands, how do they interact with local gods who they're neighbors with now? In like how do they negotiate their spirituality and customs? And because Kumoshir is by no means a closed island, or closed islands. They have, the diplomatic relationships um, can can go up and down depending on what's going on at the time. But there's certainly like more than just the indigenous population who does live there. And how might um like communities from other places who have lived there for a long time, like how has their culture changed as like um diaspora in these lands? I have a my ancestry is mixed with both Ainu and Japanese. I have one of uh my great grandfather's auntie had ohaguro, which was the dyed black teeth. Um, and I think that is such an interesting, striking piece of our culture that is not always appreciated. I think the last time I saw it show up was in some like scary yellow peril stuff in Dune Part 2. Um, but and so I think bringing out things that are oftentimes monsterized or really kind of like orientalized, like even today in 2025, which that feels kind of dated. Those things are still kind of like relevant. So I think it's interesting to bring these elements that are typically portrayed as like scary and terrifying and foreign and whatever, like the dyed black teeth, the tattoo culture, all these things, and bringing them into a more like, this is just this is culture here. This is not like scary, ooky witch doctor stuff in the, in the Midnight Mountains or whatever. Like these are just customs of people, and to sort of like normalize things that are ordinarily exoticized quite a bit. I thought it was really important in writing Kumoshir is to write it from the perspective of the people who live there, and not as a place of like looking in of this mysterious frontier land and these people and their strange cultures and how they're different from
Mm.
the what's already been pre-established. It's like I want that to feel like when you from at least from the writing perspective, you're brought in more.
Yeah.
That it's maybe that is written not by an anthropologist, but by, you know, somebody from the village, somebody showing you around, somebody who lives there, somebody who has friends there, you know, somebody who has stake in it, you know, that sort of thing.
Agreed. I think you touched on it too. There's a big opportunity to show just how different faiths, different religions, the gods of these different pantheons do interact with each other. I mean, they're not islands unto themselves. Uh, what sort of opinions or relationships do they have? Are there any crossover between them, depending on just how widespread their various faiths are? We did unlock a new stretch goal back that does let us go more into the world building aspect on this side. I reckon I reckon it'll be more of an opportunity to just elucidate on just the various schemes of the gods, the partnerships that they forged and made, the sort of rivalries that they might have, in order to give more more to material to work for GMs to work with when visualizing this setting. Uh, right. Well, I think at this point we'll kind of we'll kind of wind down. My father has been calling me nonstop since 10 minutes ago. I think he needs something. But are there any last words that folks would like to say?
Buy the book.
Well, well, yes. Buy the book, folks.
Okay,
Respect the
I'll add on
spiders.
to that. I'll, yeah, like
uh,
I'll echo that and say buy the book again if you bought it.
Yeah.
well, 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 we appreciate your generosity. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the nice folks, Hokunochu?
Thanks so much for coming on this immortal adventure with us.
Agreed. Thank you for being a part of this journey with everyone involved. Yeah, Curry. Sorry about this. I can field any sort of question in chat. I just it's, but okay. Well, once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you everyone for being here with us generally for this project. And if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to field them in Discord, or you can email nineheavenspress@gmail.com. And yeah, let's keep on keeping on. Have a good evening, and we'll see you all later.
Alright.